What makes a place feel like home? Is it the familiar streets, the local landmarks, the sense of community? We tend to view our towns through a lens of comfort and nostalgia, a safe harbor in a chaotic world. But every town, no matter how peaceful it seems, is built upon layers of history. And history is rarely simple or clean. Beneath the foundations of our homes and the pavement of our streets lie stories of struggle, tragedy, and sometimes profound darkness. These aren't secrets in the sense of a grand conspiracy, but rather uncomfortable truths that have been forgotten over time, smoothed over by progress, or intentionally omitted from the official narrative. They are the psychic wounds a community carries, often without even realizing it. Today, we journey to 3 American towns. On the surface, they are just dots on a map, but each holds a unique and deeply unsettling story. We'll explore a town being consumed by a fire that will burn for centuries, a town built from the ground up by a criminal mastermind, and a town whose soul was shattered by a single night of brutal, unsolved violence. I recognize the profound weight of human suffering they contain. This is a journey into the heart of America's forgotten tragedies. Imagine a town where the ground beneath your feet is slowly burning. A place where smoke seeps from cracks in the earth, where the roads buckle from an unseen heat, and where the air carries the faint, poisonous scent of sulfur. This isn't a work of fiction. This is the reality of Centralia, Pennsylvania. In the mid-20th century, Centralia was a bustling, unremarkable coal mining town with over 1,000 residents. Its dark secret wasn't a crime or a haunting. It was a slow-burning catastrophe that began with a single mistake. In May of 1962, a fire was deliberately set to burn trash in an abandoned strip mine pit, a common practice at the time. But this pit was connected to a labyrinth of unmapped, abandoned anthracite coal mines that riddled the ground beneath the town. The fire ignited a coal seam, and it began to spread underground. At first, no one took it seriously. They tried to extinguish it, pouring water and then slurry down boreholes, but the fire was too deep, its fuel source too vast. For years, the residents of Centralia lived on top of this growing, subterranean inferno. The true horror wasn't sudden, it was insidious. People started getting sick from carbon monoxide and other toxic gases seeping into their basements. Trees in their yards began to die from the roots up. The ground in the local cemetery grew warm to the touch. The town's hidden wound was finally exposed to the world in 1981, when a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski fell into a sinkhole that suddenly opened in his backyard. The ground gave way to a steaming, 150-foot deep pit of mud and lethal gas. He was saved only because his cousin was there to pull him out. That event shattered any illusion of safety. The federal government finally intervened, declaring the town uninhabitable. In 1984, Congress allocated more than $42 million to relocate the residents. Most families took the buyout and left, their homes demolished, leaving behind a grid of empty streets and overgrown lots. But a handful of residents refused to leave. They fought the government, clinging to the only homes they had ever known, living in a ghost town as the fire continued to rage beneath them. Today, Centralia is a modern-day Pompeii, erased not by a volcano, but by a mistake that could not be undone. Fewer than 5 people remain. The fire is still burning, and experts estimate it has enough coal to continue burning for another 250 years. The town's dark secret is the fire itself, a relentless, man-made hell that has almost completely swallowed a community, a stark and terrifying reminder that sometimes the most horrifying monsters are the ones we create ourselves. During the Klondike Gold Rush in the late 1890s, the port town of Skagway, Alaska, was the gateway to fortune. Thousands of desperate, hopeful stampeders poured into the town, seeing it as the first step on their journey to the gold fields. But for most, it was the last step. Skagway presented itself as a bustling frontier town, But its secret was that the entire community was a meticulously crafted criminal enterprise, ruled by one of America's most notorious con men, Jefferson Soapy Smith. Soapy Smith was a master of manipulation. He arrived in Skagway and didn't just build a gang. He built an entire shadow government. He controlled the town marshal, the city council, and an army of about 300 con artists and thugs known as the Soap Gang. His operation was designed to fleece every single person who set foot in Skagway, and it was horrifyingly effective. New arrivals would be greeted by friendly men who would offer to guide them through town. These guides were Soapy's men. They would lead the prospectors to businesses that were all part of the scam. There was a fake shipping company that took money to transport goods that were never shipped. There was a telegraph office that charged $5 to send a message anywhere in the world, despite the fact that the telegraph lines ended just a few feet outside the building's walls. Soapy's spies, dressed as reporters, would interview the new arrivals, learning where they were from and how much money they had, then pass that information along to the rest of the gang. His reign was one of psychological terror. He owned the only saloon that wasn't a front for gambling dens where men were cheated out of their life savings. He presented himself as a benefactor, donating to charity and opening a fake relief agency for destitute minors his own gang had just robbed. He created an illusion of order while orchestrating total chaos. The town's dark secret wasn't just that it was lawless, it was that the lawlessness was the law. But the illusion couldn't last. In July of 1898, a prospector named John Douglas Stewart was robbed of his entire sack of gold by Soapy's men. This time, the miners had had enough. They formed a vigilante group and demanded Soapy return the gold. The confrontation took place on the Juneau Wharf. Words were exchanged, guns were drawn, and in a legendary shootout, both Soapy Smith and one of the vigilantes, Frank Reed, were killed. With Soapy's death, his criminal empire crumbled. Skagway eventually became the quaint tourist town it is today, its violent past now a marketable part of its frontier charm. But the secret remains. The town wasn't built by hardy pioneers. It was built on a foundation of lies, corruption, and the shattered dreams of thousands of people who came seeking a fortune and found only ruin. Our final stop is in a small, quiet town in the heart of the Midwest, Villisca, Iowa. In the early 1900s, Villisca was the picture of American wholesomeness, a tight-knit community of churchgoers and friendly neighbors. But on the morning of June 10, 1912, that picture was irrevocably shattered by an act of such savage brutality that it haunts the town to this day. That morning, a neighbor noticed that the home of the prominent Moore family was unusually quiet. Upon entering, they discovered a scene of unimaginable horror. Josiah Moore, his wife Sarah, their 4 young children, and 2 young girls who were staying the night as guests had all been murdered in their beds, bludgeoned to death with an axe. The crime was not just brutal, it was deeply bizarre. The killer had moved through the house in the dead of night, attacking each victim in their sleep. They had then covered the faces of each victim with bedclothes and covered every mirror and pane of glass in the house with cloth. A slab of bacon was found leaning against a wall, and a plate of uneaten food was on the kitchen table. The murder weapon, Josiah Moore's own axe, was left leaning against a wall in the downstairs guest room, wiped clean of most, but not all, of its blood. The investigation that followed was a catastrophe. The crime scene was immediately contaminated by hundreds of curious townspeople before it could be secured. The list of suspects grew to include a traveling minister with a history of mental illness, a state senator who was a business rival of Josiah Moore, and even a possible serial killer who may have been responsible for similar axe murders in other states. But the real dark secret of Villisca is not who committed the crime. It's what the unsolved nature of the crime did to the town itself. In the absence of an answer, the community turned on itself. Trust evaporated overnight. Neighbors began to suspect neighbors. Wild accusations and rumors flew, destroying reputations and friendships that had lasted a lifetime. People who had left their doors unlocked for years began barring them at night. The sense of safety that had defined their lives was gone forever. Several suspects were arrested and tried over the years, but no one was ever convicted. The Villisca Axe murders remain one of America's most chilling, unsolved mysteries. The house where the murders occurred still stands, a monument to that night of terror. But the true haunting isn't confined to that one building. The crime left a permanent scar on the town's collective psyche. The dark secret of Villisca is the corrosive power of suspicion and the terrifying realization that evil can strike without reason, and that sometimes there are no answers, no closure, and no going back to the way things were. A fire that can't be quenched. A town built on lies. A question that can never be answered. The stories of Centralia, Skagway, and Villisca are unsettling because they reveal the fragility of the things we take for granted, the stability of the ground beneath us, the integrity of our communities, and the safety of our own homes. These uncomfortable truths remind us that every town has a history, and those histories are written with human experiences of struggle, of greed, and of profound loss. Exploring them isn't about finding ghosts, it's about finding empathy. It's about understanding that the places we live are shaped by the best, and sometimes the very worst, of what it means to be human. I encourage you to look into your own local history, not just for the celebratory moments, but for the difficult stories as well. It's in those forgotten chapters that we often find the most important lessons. What heavy histories does your town hold? Share your thoughts with respect and sincerity in the comments below. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows of the American landscape. Stay curious and stay compassionate.